Hi, welcome back to the channel. Now, several series are starting to come to the end of their seasons, and that's the case of our headline series today. As you've seen from the thumbnail, you'll know we're talking about the British GT Blue Ribbon event, the Silverstone 500, and the accompanying final 3 rounds of British F3. Now, I'm going to be talking about Formula Renault races from Hockenheimring, talking about news from other series as German ADAC F4, Spanish F4 and the DTM. So, let's go. Now, usually I'll end with the GT race, but looking towards next year with no WEC, no European Le Mans Series or GT World Series Endurance coming to the UK, the Silverstone 500 will be the premier sports car event in the UK next year. And if the COVID restrictions are reduced by then, it will be absolutely the event to be at. With no Formula Renault or Euro Formula Open coming to these shores, and only one of either F2, I think it's F2 that's been confirmed now, referees supporting the Grand Prix, British F3 is going to be more relevant domestically than ever. British Motorsport is potentially going to be going for a tough time of it in the near future, so can these series step up to fill the void? Now, into the race itself, the Silverstone 500. Biggest grid of the year in British GT took to the Silverstone track with 20 GT3 cars, 14 GT4s and a handful of Ferrari and Porsche GTC cars joining in for fun. At the front of the field was the number 78 Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini that a few weeks previously had won the Pro-Am class in the Spa 24 Hour, driven by Sandy Mitchell and Rob Collard, followed hotly by the number 6 Ram Racing Mercedes of Yoma Berman and Ian Loggy, with their teammates starting third and the Jensen Team Rocket McLaren 720 started by James Baldwin in fourth. In the main championship, only the number 6 wasn't in with a chance at the win, and the number 6 still had a shout at the Pro-Am championship, so it was definitely all to play for. In GT4, the number 23 Speedworks Motorsport Toyota Supra of James Kell was on pole, but the real championship fight in GT4 was between the 58 McLaren, 97 and 95 TF Aston Martins and the Ford Mustang. It was down to the wire in that championship as well. Off the start, Rob Collard kept the lead, and it was a great start from James Baldwin, got him up to second by the time they got to Maggots and Beckett's. The world's fastest gamer was pushing the veteran touring car driver hard, but after only a couple of laps, 2 of the GT4s fighting hard ended up in the gravel trap, and one of the GT4 Mercedes spun, leaving the Pro-Am McLaren GT4 nowhere to go, and the pair collided, requiring the safety car to come out. As it was called, Barwell read the script perfectly, calling both their cars in to the surprise of the cars behind, so several of the front runners ended up going an extra lap and losing track position. Also into the pits was the GT4 Championship front-running Mustang, which didn't come out again. Delayed in the pits as well was the GT4 pole-sitting Supra, which couldn't get the door shut for some reason. The first of several issues it would have and a difficult day for the team. Now, almost all the GT4 teams had pitted, but because of the required pit stop time, the cars had to sit at pit exit while the red light was on and the whole safety car train went past them. With all the GT3 cars making the most of the safety car and the chance to get one of their compulsory free stops out of the way, we were left in a strange situation where a GTC Ferrari was leading a British GT race, followed by the lead GT4 car which hadn't pitted, and because it hadn't pitted, the rest of the GT4 cars in the train which had pitted had come out a lap down and were unable to unlap themselves. Setting honesty to one, I'm not really sure how the rules work with that one. But there you go. So they ended up with the lead GT4 car a whole lap ahead of the car in second in the class. And as the safety car came in, there was a lot of confusion going on in the pack as well, as you had GTC, GT3, GT4 cars all mixed together in close company, and some of them were lapped down. Barwell pair had Sandy Mitchell now in the 78 ahead of Phil Keane in the 72, and in keeping with their statuses as silver and gold rated drivers, Keane in the 72 soon went into the lead and started pumping in some quick laps to try and build a gap. A very quick guy, it has to be said. We ran into Phil Keane at the end of the day during Brands Hatch round earlier in the year, and he gave Ayrton his Seneco Driver of the Day hat, which he had received for being the quickest driver that weekend. And at Silverstone he set about trying to show why he's so highly rated in those circles. Some spins down the field were in no way helped by one of the GTC Ferraris that kept finding itself in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, normally you look forward to the sight of Johnny Adam and an Aston Martin, But today just wasn't his day, and the team hit reliability issues and ended up in the pits, joining the Mustang and GT Merc and McLaren on the retirement list. More woes were in store for the GT4 Supra, as it ended up receiving a 10-second stop-go penalty for a pit lane infringement, while the team had been trying to fix the door that hadn't been shutting on their first stop. But back on track, it was a great battle emerging for 5th place, where there were 6 cars in the GT3 class within 4.5 seconds of each other. The group got split up a bit when the 38 Aston Martin in the middle of it received a penalty. But the penalties were coming thick and fast, as both GT4 TF Sport Aston Martins also received stop-go penalties for going through the red light at the end of the pit lane in an effort to try and stay on the lead lap. We're just over an hour into the race, and the 72 Lamborghini dived for the pits, Phil Keane handing over to AM driver and innocent smoothie founder Adam Ballon. Sandy Mitchell in the 78 went long trying to build a gap, favouring their silver driver. Gold-rated Yuma Lerman in the Ram Racing Mercedes was closing the gap down on him though, and when they pitted together 20 minutes after the 72, Rob Collard was ahead of Ballon. Ram Racing went a lap longer and managed to get their car out ahead of Collard, but the silver-rated Collard had more pace than the bronze-rated Ian Loggie. Despite that, Loggie made an incredibly hard fight of it, holding him off several laps. Ballon couldn't keep pace with them and started to fall back into the clutches of the quick cars behind, including the second Ram Racing car of Sam Dehaene, which was still in a strong place in the championship. Before long, you had the first Ram Racing Mercedes holding off the first of the Barwell cars for the lead, while the second of the Barwell cars was holding off the second of the Ram Racing cars for 5th. Racing giveth and racing taketh away, and within seconds Barwell saw the 78 take the lead and the 72 get spun out. Ballon then lit the rears trying to get it turned round and ended up pointing the wrong way on the grass, losing something in the region of 40 seconds, and although he rejoined in 7th, he lost rhythm and confidence and began to drop down the order. Having lost out in the first pit stop, the temperatures and track conditions were suddenly favouring the McLaren 720s in the field, none more so than James Baldwin and the Jensen Team Rocket No. 2, who made short work of Sam Dehaene's Mercedes in 5th before chasing after the 3 ahead, who were in board of battle for 2nd as Ian Loggie again carried out very capable defence, this time against the 77 and 96 McLarens. They had 12 seconds on Baldwin, but he was gaining at 2 seconds a lap. So in GT4, while this was going on, the most fierce battle on track was one that had been raging all year between the 97 and 95 TF Sport Aston Martins, the pair of them barely more than 3 seconds apart for the whole race, something which would have had team bosses nervous after the pair had collided with each other and ended up at the Brands Hatch round earlier on in the year. Added to championship challenger Sam Dehaene's pain was a 10-second stop-go penalty for the collision with Ballon. In the battle for 2nd, Ian Loggie's brilliant defence unfortunately was undone as he tried to lap a GT4 BMW going onto the hangar straight. He lost just enough pace so that Ian Proctor and the 96 McLaren managed to get a run at him going into Stowe. As soon as one of the McLarens got past, another joined the fray as James Baldwin caught them. But rather than lose time in the battle, he pitted straight away and handed over to teammate Michael O'Brien. Loggie was still defending hard for 3rd though, and Brendan Uribe in the 77 McLaren, in frustration to get past, ran wide, barely avoiding hitting the wall hard, making use of every metre of runoff in the end to try and regain the track, but it cost him several seconds. With 40 minutes of the race left, Adam Ballon in the 72 brought the car in and handed over to Phil Keane after what had been a pretty tough race for him. When Phil rejoined, he straight away started pumping in laps 5 seconds a lap quicker than Collard in the lead. In fairness, he had fresh tyres, but he was kind of back in 14th place at this point, and it was going to be very much damage limitation. The 96 McLaren, meanwhile, pitted from 2nd and came out a lap down, with Ollie Wilkinson gaining quickly on the 2nd place Ian Loggie. In a desperate effort to try and not lose time and lapping himself, he ran wide over the curbs going into the Wellington Straight, and the car slid into Ian Loggie, forcing him off the track on the other side, and then ended up going into a spin himself. It would end up getting a 10-second stop-go penalty for the collision, which basically finished his race or any hope of better point scoring. Loggie and Uribe pitted together within 3 seconds in the fight for 2nd, and with Rob Collard pitting from the lead a lap later and handing back over to Sandy Mitchell, he managed to get out just in time, as a second behind, having jumped the 6 Mercedes and the 77 McLaren, was Michael O'Brien in the Jensen Team Rocket McLaren. Sandy managed to get heat into the tyres before O'Brien could attack and slowly build a gap though. A late disaster hit the 77 as trying to pass some GT4 cars through Chapel. It hit a curb so hard and damaged either a wheel or a tyre, I'm not sure. It did come out again later on in the race, but it lost a lot of time by then. GT4 battle was also hotting up though as the race came to a close. The main title challengers were running 2nd, 3rd and 4th in class, with the 58 McLaren being chased down quickly by the pair of TF Sport Astons. Jamie Caroline in the 97 Aston got the McLaren with 11 minutes to go, giving him 2nd in class and the championship lead. Within a lap though, the 95 Aston was also side by side with the McLaren, and some tense corners resulted in a side by side collision that gave them momentum to the 95, which started to then pull away. At the front of GT3 it looked settled. Further down though, Phil Keane was still fighting hard for position, setting fastest laps along the way, but at that point he was still only 9th. The McLaren of Michael O'Brien was struggling to find its earlier pace as the minutes ticked down. With a minute left on the clock, he was passed by Jelmer Berman in the Ram Racing Mercedes. At the checkered flag, it was the 98 Barwell Lamborghini of Sandy Mitchell and Rob Collard taking the win, and silver and overall championships. 7 seconds behind them, second proved to be good enough to give Jelmer Berman and Ian Logie the Pro-Am Championship. And in GT4, victory went to Rob Weldon and Andrew Gordon-Colebrook in the Century Motorsport BMW, which kind of appeared out of nowhere in the closing stages of the race. It's like we didn't see it all race, and then suddenly it was 50 seconds ahead of the plate cars in position 2, and nobody was quite sure how it got there. Absolutely fair play to them. In second place in the class, Jamie Caroline and Dan Vaughan had done enough to achieve the GT4 championship crown, and congratulations especially go to Jamie Caroline on this for having what has been financially a couple of bleak years and not been able to put together a proper racing programme since he won the British F4. Congratulations to him for doing it, and let's see where GT racing takes him. From discussing British F4, it's time to get into discussing the British F3 now, which was in its usual support slot to British GT, and there were still championship battles going on. A strong run in recent races had given Caelan Fredriksson a decent championship lead and great momentum going into the final weekend. Kushmini, coming to the championship at the last minute with new to the series high-tech, had given him a great fight during the year, but realistically he needed Fredericks to have a weekend similar to the disastrous weekend he'd had at Brands Hatch earlier on in the year. Race 1 saw the pair of them lining up side by side on the front row. Fredericks on pole kind of struggled initially off the line, but rugged defence stopped Miney's momentum, and the series returnee Etten Simmons managed to jump in for second. Fredericks grabbed the race from the start and drove away from the field, though building up a 6-second lead before a collision between Ulysses DePau and Reese Yoshijima brought out the safety car. When it went in again, Fredericks got the jump again, and at the line had a 2.6 second lead. Etten Simmons in second got to take JHR Development's first podium in British F3, with Miney crossing the line in third. The result increased Fredericks' lead going into the reverse grid race 2. At the front for race 2, the main interest was whether Benjamin Pedersen, starting third on slicks, could run with the surrounding cars, which were all on wets. Most eyes, though, were towards the rear of the field. Kushmini really needed to outscore Fredericks to have a decent chance at all in the last race, and initially it looked like it was going to go well for him in the chaos of a greasy track as he managed to get his way up to 7th. But that was the high point, as he'd taken the best out of the tyres early on a surface that was starting to dry but was very mixed round the lap. He spent the rest of the race struggling to get them to work properly. Eventually he'd end up dropping down to 17th. Fredericks had slightly better luck, but still could only manage 12th, picking up some points for positions gained, but meaning it still wasn't entirely job done. At the front, the dry tyre choice seemed to be the way to go as Pedersen went into the lead. Behind him there was a great fight going on for second between Nazim Ahmad and Bart Horston. With nothing to lose, Etten Simmons had gambled on trying to change to slicks on what, as they seemed to be the tyre, but unfortunately, although the track was drying up, the difference between the two tyres wasn't enough for him to really take advantage of it. Horston got Asman on the final lap for second, but Pedersen just about had it. With the title going into the last race, Caelan Fredriksson only needed to finish and the title would be his. Starting from pole, he seemingly decided that the best way of finishing the race was just to make sure there was nobody anywhere near him, and he bolted off into the blue. Another shocking start for Miney saw him drop back to 4th, with Roberto Faria and Etten Simmons getting the jump on him. As if to confirm that the misty day just wasn't going to be his day, he also got jumped by both hill speeds later on in the race and would cross the line in a lowly 6th. A quiet end to a decent effort in the championship. Fredericks took the title in style of a win by 4 seconds from Roberto Faria, with Simmons getting his second podium of the weekend to take his tally for the year in British F3 to 2 wins, a second and a third from 7 races, which does beg the question, what could he have achieved if he had competed the full season? A Carling driver won again, this time from a high-tech driver. With the end of the FIA F3 season, they still had the F2 end of season decided to compete in, and it's becoming an interesting rivalry between the pair of teams, so hopefully we'll see more of it to come. Onto the Formula Renault weekend at the Hockenheim ring, and after a disaster in race 2 during the previous outing where he was taken out through no fault of his own, all Kaya Collet could do was go out and win. He went the right way about it for race 1, qualifying on pole, but with championship leader Victor Martins in second, the pressure really was on. Collet got away in the lead, but had not even completed a lap before the safety car was called as Hugo de Welder was hit by Petacek. At the restart, Collet again got away well, but David Vidales, who'd gone into him the previous weekend, coming back from poor qualifying, collided with De Geras, resulted in another safety car. Again, Collet got away well, and the top 3 spread out a little, but there was fierce fighting behind. Anne-Marie Cordial spun Michael Bell off at the hairpin, and on the last lap, Hadrian David put Paul Aron into a spin, dumping him down to 11th. Collet crossed the line to take the victory, but Martins in second meant that the damage to his championship lead was minimised. Quinn in third and Colapinto in fourth ensured that their battle for third, along with David Vidales, was very much alive and well. After a strong race 1, race 2 went wrong from the start with Collet qualifying down in 9th with Victor 6 places ahead of him. Lorenzo Colombo started on pole. Martins took the lead from Colombo off the line, but Colombo fought back, going the long way around and very wide at the hairpin to retake the lead. Collet was off to a flyer though, having worked his way up to 5th by halfway through lap 2. By contrast, Paul Aron had a shocking first couple of laps and he fell to 7th. Worrying signs occurred for the drivers though, as Hadrian David in 4th started having smoke coming from the back of his car and started losing places, which put Collet up to 4th within 2 seconds of Colapinto ahead. However, rather than being able to look forward, he was having to look behind because Alex Quinn had his own ideas about making up positions and started applying pressure. And before the battle could get properly spicy though, something in Collet's car broke and he had to retire from the race. Safety car was called to remove the broken car, carrying his broken championship dreams away from the track at the same time. At the restart, Colombo went slightly wide and just about managed to keep Martins behind, but that was as close as Martins got after that. At the line, it was Colombo ahead of now very secure in the championship Victor Martins, with Colapinto and Quinn 3rd and 4th. In the championship, Kayo's bad luck in the last 2 rounds had given Victor a commanding lead of 44 points going into the final round. Will Renault take him back in the likely event he takes the win, and does he have the budget to get a decent seat in FIA F3 next year? After not being able to make the step up last year and losing his Renault backhoe, there certainly seems to be more questions than answers about his future. In other news, it was the final round of the German ADAC F4 and a close battle for the championship going on between Red Bull Junior's Johnny Edgar and Jack Crawford. In the first race of the weekend, Edgar was defending from Crawford late on in the race for the lead when the pair of them had a coming together that took Edgar out the points with a puncture. This gave Crawford a 2-point lead, which he extended to 9, winning the second race from Edgar. In the third race, Edgar was starting 7th because of the reverse grid positions, and with Crawford starting behind in 8th, there was still a slim chance he could take it. And charging through the field, he crossed the line in 2nd place, which gave him the championship by 2 points after Crawford had struggled to get through. A deserved championship by Edgar, who'd led the championship for most of the year. With Crawford, at 15 years old, is definitely one to look out for as well. In Spanish F4, another champion was crowned in the form of Cas Havercourt after a dominant weekend, winning all 3 races. With 1 round remaining, he's 93 points clear of his nearest rival. Oh, and if you think that Mercedes in Formula 1 or Prema in Formula 3 are the definition of dominant, the team's championship has got MP Motorsport, who currently have 634 points, with the second closest team on 193. Sadly missing from the race report this year has been DTM, as I've been kind of struggling to find somewhere to watch the full races and cheer on Ferdinand Habsburg. Still, in the final weekend of the series in its current incarnation before switching to GT3 concepts and what have you, Rene Rast secured his third title fighting against Nico Müller, who was still in with a shout in the last race, but a commanding victory from Rene Rast meant that he took the title 353 points to Müller's 330. And it also meant that with 3 titles and 24 wins, he moves to Formula E next year as Audi's most successful ever DTM driver, with only Bernd Schneider having more titles in the series history. Well, the coming week is lots of motorsport to be getting on with. The return of Formula 1, the WEC 8-hour series finale at Bahrain, and Formula Renault's end-of-season shootout. So, lots to discuss then. But until then, goodbye for now, and thank you for watching.